Welcome to In Their Shoes by Seanchoíche. I'm Gaff.
And I'm Bex. We're here to help people connect through the power of shared storytelling.
In this podcast, we invite two people to tell a story about their life. Instead of reading their own story, they'll swap and they'll read each other's as if it was their own.
After both stories are finished, we will dive into the real questions to be asked, feelings that came up, and more moments that have maybe never been shared before.
Come with us as we experience walking in each other's shoes and immersing ourselves in each other's stories. This episode is brought to you by Mubi, a curated streaming service dedicated to elevating great cinema from around the globe. From iconic directors to emerging auteurs, there's always something new to discover.
With Mubi, each and every film is hand-selected so you can explore incredible movies, streaming anytime, anywhere.
Now streaming in the UK and Ireland, Fallen Leaves, a 2023 film by Aki Kaurismäki. In modern-day Helsinki, Ansa and Holappa, two lonely souls in search of their first love, meet by chance in a local karaoke bar. However, the pair's path to happiness is beset by numerous obstacles, from lost phone numbers to mistaken addresses, alcoholism, and a charming stray dog.
Oh, the bit in this film where they lose the number, I believe she gives it to him, and then it literally falls out of his pocket. He has a hole in his pocket or something. It is the hardest thing to watch because he's so smitten by her and he can't wait to ring her, but then he loses it, and then she thinks he doesn't want to ring her, and then he goes and hangs out at the cinema where they exchange numbers, and it's just this back and forth of each of them wanting to meet each other but missing each other.
Oh god, there's nothing worse. You know, that happened to me once.
No. What?
I gave a guy in Australia my phone number and I never put the +353 because I had an Irish phone at the time.
Oh god.
And he contacted +61 whatever my number was, and naturally it just never delivered. And he was just left there sitting thinking that I'd ghosted him or given him a fake number. And then I checked my Instagram requests.
I was going to say, obviously you have sorted this out to some degree.
No, well, I have sorted it out because I'm speaking about it so somberly, or so calmly. But I checked my Instagram requests. He messaged me there the next day, and we still managed to get a date in before I left Sydney. So it did end up quite nicely and romantically. But whether it ends up romantically for this couple, you'll have to find out by watching it on Mubi yourself.
And to stream the best of cinema, you can try Mubi free for 30 days at mubi.com/Seanchoíche.
That's mubi.com/SEANCHOICHE for a whole month of great cinema for free. In the words of the late Kurt Cobain, wanting to be someone else is a waste of who you are. Welcome, guys.
Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you guys doing today?
Good.
Great.
Warm.
Very warm. Yeah, we're in a hot London recording studio today, and it's only going to get hotter with our wonderful guests that we have this evening, or this morning, or this afternoon. Sorry, I'm such a little flirt. That quote at the beginning of this podcast was a Kurt Cobain quote, all about wanting, which is the theme today. But I think first things first, we need to introduce our guests to our audience. So if you wanted to do that.
So, Maude Apatow is an American actress. She is best known for portraying Lexi Howard in HBO drama series Euphoria. The elder daughter of filmmaker Judd Apatow and actress Leslie Mann, Apatow began her career as a child appearing in Knocked Up, Funny People, and This Is 40. Later film roles have included Assassination Nation and The King of Staten Island, as well as the Netflix miniseries Hollywood.
Alex Gogarty is from Dublin, Ireland. He lives in London and he works in media sales. He always tells people that he is extremely normal, which on reflection is not a particularly normal thing to say. He's a long-time Seanchoíche storyteller and has been hosting Seanchoíche events in London since last year. He also performs stand-up comedy. You can often find him at open mics around London, and he'll be performing at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival for the first time this year as part of So You Think You're Funny 2024. This is the first time Maude and Alex have met each other. You might be wondering why they're on the show together, a famous Hollywood actress and a Dublin boy in sales, but they have more of a link than you'd imagine, and all will be revealed in Alex's story that Maude will be reading shortly. But firstly, welcome. How does it feel to finally have met one another?
Yeah, good.
It's been a long time
It's been
coming.
a long time coming.
I think Alex has gone quite white. The blood is...
That's from the heat. Also, I'm paling in comparison of our two bios of movie stars, and I'd say stand-up comedy is really just, I've told jokes in rooms to 5 people and none of them have laughed, and that's happened probably 5 or 6 times.
He's underselling himself. He's
No,
won competitions. He's going to the Edinburgh fucking Fringe Festival. You are a lot funnier than you think.
That's nice of you to say. Thank
Great.
you.
Are we all going to play ourselves down today?
Let's play ourselves down,
Shall
guys.
we?
Yeah,
Like,
we're doing a play down.
So Maude, when did you get over here?
I got here on Saturday night.
Okay, so still a bit jet lagged.
Yeah, I did not sleep last night, so I apologize.
Honestly, I
in
don't know
advance.
if any of us slept last night. Did you sleep last night, Alex?
I didn't. Again, heat related.
Okay, nothing to do with anyone else.
No, I think I'm probably the most relaxed person in this room.
Yeah, maybe.
I had a dream about this exact scenario, and I'm not going to tell you how it plays out, but
Oh
It
no.
was a premonition.
yeah, I think I had a premonition about what
Okay.
goes down today.
Maybe we can revisit your premonition at the end of the podcast.
Yeah.
Was it accurate?
I think it ended with me actually going to Glastonbury because it seems like everyone else here is but me.
It's an exciting time, though. Summer is officially sprung. As we have already established, it's very hot. And really, you know, this is a podcast where we're very much exploring our own stories. And for those of you guys who haven't listened to the Seanchoíche in Their Shoes podcast before, what we do is we invite 2 guests into the episode who generally know each other or have some sort of link to one another that is less tenuous than today's link. But instead of reading their own...
We have people's mothers come in. It's been the general.
Close relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But this is a bit different. But what we tend to do is we have our guests come in and they'll each have a story prepared revolving around the same theme. Instead of reading their own stories, they'll swap each other's stories and read each other's stories as if they were their own, walking in each other's shoes, placing each other in each other's stories, and fully embracing the empathetic nature of storytelling. So we're going to start with Maude Apatow reading Alex Gogarty's story first, and this is revolving around the theme of wanting. So
Yeah. And can I just say, this is like, I've been waiting for this for so, like, I don't
Getting
know.
a lot
this,
of hype.
this whole story, I know that obviously, Alex, you read this, and I've heard so many people talk about it, like, on the grapevine, like, oh, you only heard this story. It was insanely good. So, like, for now, this to be the situation, like, I actually just can't wait for everyone to hear this. It's just so good.
for context, Alex read this story twice at Seanchoíche in different places, once in London and then once at a music festival called All Together Now in Waterford in Ireland. And at festivals, we'll run Seanchoíche storytelling slots where we'll, you know, take over a marquee or go into a beautiful forest stage or something like that. And generally there's like 120 to 200 people that will attend and sit in the lawns and listen to the story. Alex started telling this story, and by the end, I shit you not, there were around 1,000 people gathered around. And this collective gasp during the story was just so memorable and tangible, and it went down a treat. So we hope for our listeners it will go down an equal treat.
I've always wanted to be famous. Not for any talent in particular, but just the thrilling sensation of being known. I used to want to be famous for being an actor or a singer. Even when I was like 26 or 27, I still kind of thought that was about to happen. Like some days I'd wake up and think, today's the day, even though I had taken no discernible steps to doing anything of note ever. I work in sales. Now I know that those aren't things in my future, but a part of me still wants to be famous. I know it won't be mega fame. Genuinely, what I'd be happy with now would be if someone passed me on the street and then turned to their friend and said, I think I recognize that guy. And their friend said, really? And then they'd turn and say, actually, I'm not sure. That's my ideal level of fame. You may sense a hint of self-delusion in this story, and indeed you would be correct. I have no talent for the screen or stage. My biggest role to date was in college. Production of West Side Story as the only non-singing, non-dancing role in the entire musical, Lieutenant Shrink. I auditioned with the prologue of Les Mis, taking the brave decision to play both parts of Javert and Jean Valjean by myself. They gave me a callback. I thought, okay, wow, I must be pretty good at this. Then I got a second callback, after which I was like, am I the future of musical theater globally? It certainly looks that way. When they told me I was actually King Tinkerus, older policeman Shrink, they said it was on the strength of my American accent, which did make me feel a bit better. But then I realized on the way home that I didn't even do an American accent in the audition. They were obviously like, where can this guy do the least damage to the musical integrity of this show? As a crowning jewel in my stage career, it was a humbling one. I once went on a date with an actor in college who I fell head over heels for and pretended I too was an actor. She said, "Oh, what have you been in?" And I said, "Oh, you know, this and that. Lieutenant Shrink mostly." There was not a second date. But yet a weird thing about my life is that I've frequently been adjacent to fame. The secondary school that I went to, not particularly renowned for the arts, has produced a number of successful actors. Andrew Scott, the hot priest from Fleabag, very sexy, very hot, we love him. Jack Gleason, maybe not as traditionally sexy, admittedly, but a great actor, and we love him also. And then the only one I actually know personally, a gentleman by the name of Paddy Gibson. Paddy you might know from the series The OA, or Shadow and Bone. He was in a film with posters everywhere called The Portable Door. He was the year below me in school, a lovely guy who I've bumped into now and then over the years, and he's always fun and nice, but I have this weird secret enmity towards him, purely out of jealousy, because in my head I see him and think, that should have been me. Which is only because I know him. Like, I know it's completely illogical. He is a proven, experienced creative, a bona fide movie star with credentials and talent. I, on the other hand, recently emailed myself the single line, "What's with the toilets on trains?" because I thought that was an idea that had some legs. Evidently, me and him are not the same. But since I was about 18, he had been my link to show business, and I've weirdly followed his career without ever talking to him about it. I have this ongoing passive-aggressive conversation with him in my head. I'd see a headline of him getting a role, and I'd be like, "Okay, pretty small fry, but a good stepping stone. I could see why you take that. Well done, man." Or he'd post a photo of him at a premiere, and I'd be like, "Pretty out there fashion choice, Patty. Not sure I would have worn that myself, but you do you, buddy." He occupied so much of my headspace that for a long period of time, it seemed like he was popping up everywhere in my life. I began to see him in places that he wasn't even there. He'd appear as a background extra in my favorite show, or I'd get suggestions for his content on services that I didn't even have. The Portable Door, more like Portable Leave Me Alone, Shadow and Fuck Off. Thankfully, I'm in a better space now, and Patty doesn't live rent-free in my head. But my most remarkable brush with fame came at the height of this paranoia several years ago when I was living in Dublin with our esteemed host, Gaff. Gaff and I used to watch a lot of TV together, especially in those days of reduced social activities due to COVID. And one of our favorite shows was the HBO drama Euphoria. We binged the shit out of Euphoria when we were in isolation. This already emotional show was made infinitely more intense by our fractured state of minds. A bright spark in this desolate show was a character by the name of Lexi, a positive, intelligent girl played by the actor Maude Apatow. We couldn't wait to see what Lexi was up to each episode, and I started to think that actually Maude Apatow was cool and we'd probably get on well in real life. Maybe she'd even like me. One day I was sitting on the couch and I said to Gaff, "Should I send Maude Apatow a message on Instagram?" He said, "Saying what?" I said, "I don't know, I think you're cool." He said, "Well, she has 4 million followers, so she definitely won't see it, but yeah, go for it." I'd never messaged anyone famous before, and I thought about it for a moment. I asked Gaff, "Is that actually really weird and embarrassing?" And he said, "Maybe, but you'll literally never ever meet her in real life, so why not?" And so I did. After a particularly banging episode of Euphoria, I sent Maude the following message. "That was the best episode of the season. Can't wait for the next one. If you're ever in Dublin and need any recommendations, please shoot me a message. Heart." This message was not seen. Months passed. I forgot about Maude, lived my life, lost Gaff to a move to Amsterdam, and started prepping for my own move to London. However, Gaff and I did have one trip in the diary together, a 10-day excursion to Istanbul. We went to that amazing city for longer than anyone needs to go anywhere, had incredible time getting regularly hammered, and went to the airport for our journey home both sick as dogs and overall empty husks of human beings. While boarding, in a desperate twist of loneliness, hangover anxiety, and shattered body and spirit, I thought it would be a good idea to send Maude Apatow a voice note on Instagram. We hadn't had any contact since my first message. She was probably busy, but what if it was meant to be? As the great Chris Martin from Coldplay says, if you never try, you'll never know. And so, partially delirious from a 10-day bender with Gaff, coughing beside me, I sent Maude the following messages.
Hey, Sorry, my finger slipped. This might be my hangover talking, but I'm pretty sure I am 100% in love with you. Maybe you don't feel the same, but you have to say these things. And if you are ever interested in maybe seeing me sometime, I think you are the best. Maude Apatow. It's still going. Sorry, Maude. My
I haven't heard that in so long. So you go.
I put my phone away, immediately forgot what would ultimately prove to be one of the most embarrassing things to ever happen to me in my life, and boarded the plane. Several hours later...
This is so embarrassing for me.
This is amazing for us.
Yeah.
Several hours later, after a particularly arduous flight and sitting at opposite ends of the plane, we landed in Dublin, and I turned my phone on. Blinking onto my screen, the top notification was one from Instagram. Voice message received from Maude Apatow. What the absolute balls and shit, is this real? I looked around at the people beside me, amazed that no one was aware of the enormity of what had just happened. Lexi from Euphoria had just sent me a voice note. Unable to believe my eyes and desperately plugging AirPods into my ears, I heard the following.
Sorry, Alex. This is a bit of an unusual reply, I'm sure, not expecting, but this is Paddy Gibson here. Yeah, obviously trying to steal my girl. Please don't. She's lovely.
That is how I learned Paddy Gibson and Maude Apatow were going out. Who is this guy? When will he leave me alone? Can't I have my own life? Let me live, Paddy. Please, let me live. Naturally, this was an incredibly hilarious and embarrassing situation, so I replied with some messages that were definitely not hilarious and even more embarrassing. I texted... I did wonder this at the time. I texted back, ha 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 ha. No harm meant to either of you. What the fuck does that even mean? Keep making amazing art, you little rebels. And thus, the Maude Apatow chapter of my life came to a close. And where are they all now? Well, as for me, remember that actor I went on a date with in college? We reconnected when I moved to London. Her name is Caitlin, and we now live together, and she's the love of my life. I asked her if it would be fine if I told this story, and she said, obviously, it's so funny and also so embarrassing for you. Thanks, BB, I love you. To Maude, I think you'll probably never hear this, but I'm sorry for sending you weird messages on Instagram. I think you're really cool, but unfortunately, you snooze, you lose. I'm taken now. I wish you all the best, and I hope it all works out for Lexi, like it has for me. And Paddy can still fuck off.
Very good.
Okay. This is ridiculous. Like,
You're excellent.
So
I cannot have
funny.
told it better myself.
No,
That
it's
was so good.
It was
it's
perfect.
so good. Thank you, Maude, for sharing
Yeah.
that, for reading it.
Well done.
Yeah, sorry, another applause is due.
It's also so funny because I've told this story several times and it's like never embarrassing. This is always hilarious. And when you hear the person it's about read it out, I'm like, oh, actually, that is the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to anyone ever. it's like, I'm only just
so
realizing now, sitting in this podcast studio, I'm like, oh my God, that is cringe.
It is so random.
It is crazy. It's a crazy, crazy thing
It's
that
crazy.
occurs.
Well, it's so... I was just like randomly like
You
looking
have
at
to
my
give your
messages.
side of it, yeah.
And Paddy and I had been out the night before, and I was in the other room, and I listened to the voice memo, and I was like, oh, this guy kind of sounds like Paddy. And so I went in the other room, and I was like, because he's always like, oh, everyone from Dublin knows each other. And I was like, do you know this guy? He was like, what's his name? He's like, oh, yeah. Yeah, no, we went to school together. And I was like, what? And we were dying, and then he sent the response.
I just
But
love...
what a weird coincidence.
So insane.
It's so serendipitous. And like, it is true that everyone in Dublin kind of doesn't know each other. There's a degree of separation. But when the degree of separation is a Hollywood TV star and movie star, like,
What are
that's
the
just
odds?
absolutely bonkers. We'd love to know, like, I suppose, like, you must receive messages quite regularly. Like, why did Alex's voice notes stand
You
out?
must get messages from loads of weirdos.
yeah.
Well, because it was a voice recording. And I saw it was a voice recording in the preview of the message.
Yeah.
And I was like,
That's brave.
I always listen to the voice recordings because they're pretty those are weird sometimes. That was
So
a
just,
more normal
just to
one.
all the
Yeah.
listeners,
I wouldn't be giving that
celebrities
advice out.
listen to voice recordings. Just remember that. Just go all in, saying who you want. Come on into the podcast. We can make this work for a lot of people.
No,
But
in all seriousness.
I did remember reading your response. Keep making art, you little rebels. And I was like, what the fuck?
I remember at the time being like, what do you say back to that? Because I was like, this is a guy I know pretty well. And he sent the voice note back to me. And also, they're together. And I just sent a voice note to this girl being like, I love you. And I was like, fuck, what do I say? I was like, well, they're both artists. And artists love art. So I was like, you know what? Just keep making amazing art, little rebels.
How long did it take you to leave the house after you sent that response?
I mean, I've pretty thick skin, so I kind of just brushed it off. But now I think I'm realizing I'm probably not going to leave the house for the next 6 months.
Got
as
you.
of this point.
Got you.
This might be an
That's fair.
embellishment, and it might just be my own kind of creative mind rewriting history. But I'm 100% sure that flight that we took from Istanbul to Dublin had to land twice. It was one of those flights that
did.
didn't fully land. It was really scary. The plane was tense, and we did finally come to a safe landing, which was wonderful. And we're here today to tell the tale. But when you turned on your phone, you saw the voice note from Maude, and you let out an audible gasp. And I think the woman next to you thought that you were like kind of going through some
I
PTSD
did.
from the plane landing twice.
I did, because obviously me and Gaff
Squealing.
were in the sit beside each other. Obviously he knew that I'd sent the voice note because it was on the boarding. And then so when we landed, I was like sitting on my own with like rows of people around, and we had this like really intense flight, and I was obviously like still super hungover, and we landed, like people were kind of like looking around like smiling. We made it, and I was like, oh, I looked at my phone, I was looking at people beside me, and then they were all like smiling like, yeah, we did it, buddy, we're here. I was like, no, you don't get it. This is crazy. Look at this notification. Yeah, it was crazy.
Did you ever think that you'd be sitting here with Maude?
No, there was one time where I thought that we would come face to face when I was going to tell this story at Seanchoíche, and in my defense, I texted Paddy. I was like, "Can I tell this story about this guy's girlfriend who I don't know?" I was like, "Oh, I was thinking, the voice note story. Could I tell it at one of Gaff's storytelling events?" And he was like, "Yeah, totally." And then a couple of days later, he was like, "Yeah, actually, we're in town, and we actually might come." I was like, "That's normal, for sure. Yeah, that's definitely something I'm totally fine with." But then you guys were never to make it in the end. I was like, "Okay, that's so much better." And then I told it since then a couple of times, and now it's just like a normal story that I've told. But now we've come full circle, and it's an embarrassing story,
And
but it's worth it for the story, I think.
It's worth it.
coming back to the theme, obviously the theme of this episode is wanting. It's like the want for something, and we'll get to your want in a moment, Maude, when Alex reads your story out. But why was it needed, or why has it been needed to be famous? Why do you want to be famous? Why have you craved this fame?
I don't know if I needed it, but I'd love to know Maud's thoughts on this, because I think it's because I don't have that much talent, and I always find it so interesting. Like, we have friends that are like amazing performers. I was thinking this in the way here, like my friend Richard, who's an amazing singer, but he's so like nervous to ever sing. Like, he's so like, and I remember saying to him once, if I had your voice, I'd be singing all the time. And he was like, no, because like I'd be worried that like people are just going to think I'm showing off. So I think when you don't have talent in that regard, you're like, well, I could do that, and I actually think I would be the best at it. And that's reversal. But again, and now I've come to peace with the fact that I'm not an actor or a singer. But maybe this podcast will make me famous for all the wrong reasons.
Don't hold your breath.
It's going to be my maximum reach achieved in my life.
I think you have a talent, at least, for putting yourself out there authentically. Like, I think that is a talent in its own right. And that's why you're obviously good at comedy, because you say things or do things that other people would want to, but maybe just don't have the balls to do. So I mean, and that's sort of like coming into your own and realizing that. Like, when did you realize, I guess, that like that's sort of what you wanted to do rather than go down the acting, performing, singing route in that classic sense?
I don't know, to be honest. A lot of it was down in Seanchoíche, to be fair. So when Gaff kicked it off a couple of years ago in Dublin, and then did told a couple of stories at the events, and it was super fun. I was like, and they were usually comedic stories when I was telling them. I was like, oh, maybe I'll do stand-up comedy. But then what I didn't realize is that the audience at Seanchoíche is the most warm and like receptive and easiest laughs that you'll ever have in your life. And I was like, wow, this is like the easiest thing ever. Why doesn't everyone do stand-up comedy? And as I alluded to earlier, stand-up comedy is a lot harder.
Yeah.
But no, I think you definitely hit the nail on the head, Bex. I don't have the same embarrassment gene perhaps others have, and maybe you need a lack of that gene to be able to do stand-up comedy or send famous people voice notes on Instagram.
Do you think in film and TV, do you need to have that element of like inhibitions with embarrassment as well? Because in a way, you're also putting yourself out there when you're on TV and in film. Maude?
I mean, it's tricky because I'm always embarrassed. I'm like constantly living in a state of embarrassment. So Yeah, no, I'm miserable.
when you're out there. Do you play yourself back? A lot of actors I speak to don't ever
Oh,
watch
God,
themselves.
no.
Yeah,
Gav, do you watch yourself on this?
yeah.
You do? Yeah, I can't do
I
that.
listen to I listen to the podcast.
Oh, yeah, well, but I mean,
back.
watch yourself. It's a whole different experience.
I hate watching myself.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really love seeing myself on
So
film.
that's a nightmare. I don't know how you
I
do
think
that.
you just have to forget that it's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you think about being I mean, look, this
I
right
know,
here.
I realized I've been looking right into this red blinking light for the last hour.
I'm trying to get my good side. I'm all insecure.
I'm trying to figure out what is my good side. Does it exist?
I can't see myself, so I have no idea where like the sweat beads.
That's
are
why
being
you chose that.
visible.
So
Yeah,
it makes
exactly.
sense.
That's why I always choose to see.
Most privilege.
But it's also, I suppose, like, the want to be famous is something that a lot of people who aren't famous experience. But then, like, when you are famous, like, what's the reality? Is it as desirable? Is it nice to be recognized by strangers on the street? It probably isn't, right?
Is it nice to receive these voice notes?
I mean, it's tricky. I feel like people who are like attracted to being an actor are very sensitive, and so I think, God, you can't talk about being an actor without sounding like a douche. There's just no way to do it. But yeah, you get like these really sensitive people who put themselves out there, and it's very vulnerable. And then like, yeah, I think people get really nervous and scared, and it is scary to know that people are watching you and judging you and talking about you.
Yeah.
So it's a weird thing.
Yeah.
It's like you want to do it you love, but it does come with these sort of
repercussions.
Yeah.
Or I'll never forget the most embarrassing moment of my life was my brush with fame. I was flying from Los Angeles to New York. I was in LA for work, and I met loads of people that weekend. It was this event that was sponsored by Complex. We'd done like this big kind of sponsorship with Jemison at the time, and I'd met a couple of famous people. Like I'd met Anderson .Paak and Steve Aoki and stuff. So I was like,
Your
wow,
favourites.
basking in fame. But I was hopping on a plane to go back to New York, and I saw this girl walking through security, and I recognized her, and I was like, oh hey, and she just stopped in her tracks, and she was like, hey, and I was like, we met over the weekend, and she was like, did we? And I was like, yeah, we met over the weekend, and she was like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I know you. Are you Irish? And she was like, no, I'm not Irish. She's like, oh, but we must. Do you live in New York? And she's like, yeah, I live in New York. I was like, oh, maybe we know each other from living in New York. I might have met you at a house party. You might know a friend of a friend. And she was like, I don't know. And then finally she was like, oh, I really hate to have to say this, but I sometimes act. So you might actually know me from television. And my voice went up an octave. I was like, so you're an actor? She was like, yeah. I was like, so I know you from television? And she was like, I think so. And I was like, okay, you're not letting me move until I tell you what you're in. And she was like, okay, fine. So she just stood there next to TSA while I was guessing what she was in. I was like, were you in Game of Thrones? And she was like, no, I wish I was in Game of Thrones. And it took me ages until finally I realised that I didn't even know her name. I said, oh my God, you're the ice cream girl from Stranger Things. It was Maya Hawke. And she was like, yes. And I was like, thank you, you're such an amazing actor. Please go to your flight. Blah, blah, blah. And then I went to my plane. I was sitting there like frantically typing, pretending to be doing something just to like process what had just happened. And then all I hear is, so you're Irish then? And she sat next to me. And she was like, I used to live in Ireland. I was like, no way. And she's like, yeah, we did a film in Dunleary. I was there for 6 months. And I actually almost went to the Lear, which is the acting school in Dublin. And then she was like, but I ended up going elsewhere. And we chatted and things were going relatively smoothly. I think it was a lot cooler then than I had been at TSA. And then I definitely said something to fuck it up because she was like, so I'm going to go for some snacks, but I really like your accent and I love the way that your jacket matches your eyes. And off she went into the ether. So
what a
yeah.
perfect thing to say.
Yeah.
Right? She just closed the conversation so nicely and I felt quite validated and
Was this an
gratified.
EasyJet flight?
No, it was an Delta, Los Angeles to New York
Could only
City.
be.
Yeah, of course.
Get
yeah.
Maya Hawke on the podcast next.
Hopefully. Maya, if you're listening, I'm sorry.
Our special guest.
Well, one thing I wanted to add was what I found very brave about this too is, and sort of what makes you so likable is the fact that you actually just called out what you wanted. Like, you want to be famous. Like, a lot of people would probably feel that or have that. And we have that with like a lot of things that we want. We have this like internal desire for it, but there's like a weird shame in admitting it to ourselves because it also makes you feel like the life that you have isn't good enough. But I think in doing that, like, you own it a bit more, and then all of a sudden things unravel and you're sat in the studio with the person that you've wrote the story about. So
Yeah, I don't know, is that a good thing? Is this a good result of what I want? But it is funny you say that because I think Irish people do this a lot as well. Not to talk about Ireland again, but people aren't so forward with the things that they want, or they'll be like, oh yeah, no, I'm kind of good at this, or I'd like to. So yeah, it's something I'm definitely trying to do, and I think our generation getting a bit better at it is being like, no, I'm good at this thing, and this is the thing I want to do, and yeah. So, but thank you. That's so nice of you to say.
yeah. sometimes it comes with age, potentially.
yeah.
I don't know. Are you good at saying what you want?
Definitely not.
Yeah. Yeah.
But maybe, yeah, it is interesting. Like culturally, that's something that Patty and I talk about a lot because he is, he's definitely less direct than I am sometimes in saying what he wants. And
Yeah.
we talk about that.
Yeah,
Maybe I am really direct. I'm pretty direct, actually. I take it back.
fuck yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Own it.
Irish people like to take the piss out of other people that have expectation or like any sort of ambition in a weird way, right? Like my friends are like, get over yourself. And I'm like, I should get over myself. Like, do you know what I mean? So it's like, as soon as you do that, then they're like, no, come back down to earth. Come back down to earth. Which is kind of why I love the Irish people and what I miss in general, because there is something endearing about having the piss taken out of you. It means that
is.
you're close as well.
It gets like there's like an extent to which it's healthy.
Yes.
And then I think there is an element though in Irish society which is like self-deprecating to a defect. No, to a what's the word? To a detriment.
Detriment.
And I think that it is very nice to have it culturally where we do kind of back ourselves, but then also take the piss out of ourselves. But I think that we need to get better about actually backing ourselves for things that we are naturally good at. And that's kind of definitely happening. I think it's been kind of validated by the amount of amazing Irish talent that's out in the world, including Paddy, including Andrew Scott, including others.
Yeah, we're having a moment.
Yeah, we
time.
are.
Irish
Big time
people are like
moments.
cool right now.
Hot Irish guy summer.
Hot Irish guy
guy
summer.
year. Yeah, big time.
Hot Irish guy decade, please.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Period.
Yeah, it's fun. It's good.
But
Hot Irish girl could maybe like
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
moment
Hot Irish
at
people.
some stage. I don't know.
Yeah, hot Irish people.
One other thing before we move on, and you read Maude's story, that I want to say too is that I loved in your story was when you called out that Paddy became the obsession with you, but like literally also because he was in such close proximity. So there's something, I think, and I don't know if we all feel this about, you can have like a dream, and if it's almost like a fantasy, you're like, well, it was never going to happen. But is it because Paddy was like, like so there, and so he made your like fantasy a reality that it became so like much worse in a way?
I think the proximity is definitely a thing. It's illogical because again, he's obviously an amazing actor and works super hard. And I'd never acted, but because he was in school with me, and I see this guy doing it in a show or whatever, having loads of success, I'm like that easily could have been me if I firstly had all the talent that he had, but secondly took all those steps. So I think the proximity is a good thing, and it's similarly, I think part of it is what we were just saying, the Irish kind of like tall poppy syndrome. It's like he's obviously incredible. I'm like, yeah, well, I went to school with him. Like he's just like a normal guy. He's not actually that impressive, but it's just purely out of jealousy and like a kind of wanting to bring down people that are doing well only because you want to be doing it yourself. But no, I actually think he's class. And I really like him. I swear.
You said that a couple of times now.
I know. It's also so funny. I mean, the first time I told it, I was like, this is hilarious that I'm just telling this story to random strangers when I've never actually said to himself, by the way, that, I've like been really jealous of you for like 20 years.
I loved in your story, one of my favourite parts was the passive aggressive inner monologues that you're having with Paddy, being like, nice outfit, but I wouldn't wear that myself, buddy. Like, it's just so.
I did
at
read.
home on
I
my
read
own.
him that part.
Did you read him that
He
part?
was crying. That's my favorite part.
Oh, I'm delighted.
What was he like in school?
Very personable, lovely guy. Really nice.
Say what you want to say, Alex.
Yeah, bit of an
Say the real.
asshole. Yeah, he's definitely shorter than me. I used to be physically stronger. He definitely is now. No, he was such a lovely guy, but he was also there. There a few people you could tell that because we had a couple actors that's got, even a few that overlap at the same time, and there's always a few that you're like, oh yeah, that actually makes sense. You know what I mean? He's one of those guys that's like, okay, fair, he's a star. I like to think people thought that about me, and then it just hasn't worked out. I don't think so.
Did you know Paddy when he was doing magic?
No, I heard about this. Actually, one of his good friends I'm seeing this evening, Mark Costello, shout out to Mark Cozy, was telling me about his previous magic career. And I was like, I didn't know this. And like, is that something he's trying to bury from his past, or is that going to make a...
Well, I just outed him again on public platform. So, yeah, he's trying to bury it for sure. But I didn't know. The timeline. I'm trying to figure it out when that sort of was happening. But I guess he was a lot younger. Did you meet when you were like 14?
like 13. Yeah.
God, so he must have been really young, or maybe he was doing magic and you had no idea.
I think this is the sign for him. Let's own up to things that we're good at. Let's say what we want. Paddy,
Exactly.
restart the magic career. Stop acting.
Sorry guys, I actually
Send your roles to me.
I choked in my water there. I think kind of in shock. Was he like a magician at parties and stuff? Or?
Oh yeah, no, he had business cards. He was like he did magic at weddings and performed in competitions.
It's a secret life.
He had a full
so
secret
cool.
magic life.
What was his stage name?
I know his email is magicboygibson@gmail. So
Wow.
It's about to
The
get some
amount
of your
of
friends.
emails.
he's gonna
kill
get a lot of emails.
but he's good. The first time we met 2 years ago at Glastonbury, and he did magic for me, and he was really bad, but I think he was just really fucked up.
Rusty
And
as
I was
well.
like, wow, this is so embarrassing for him that he's so bad at magic. And then a couple weeks later, he told me, he was like, I'm a magician. I'm like, sure you are. Based on that, you are not. But then he did magic for me, and I was very impressed.
Epic.
He is good.
Any specific genre, like ventriloquism or disappearing, or
He's got a trick where he can like make a card come out of his mouth.
No way.
It's quite hot.
It's
Very cool.
yeah.
Yeah, it is. When I saw him do that, I was like, damn.
Oh, you're
I have
locked
a
in.
friend who put on her dating profile that she was attracted to magicians, and so she would go on all these first dates, and these poor guys that just didn't know how to do magic at all would learn like a basic trick
No
to try and
way.
impress her.
That's pretty
commitment.
nice to know
Yeah.
that guys were doing that for her.
Yeah, exactly. It's like playing a game a little bit, you know, with like
Who's gonna put in the effort?
yeah,
Yeah.
like who actually is going to read and follow through on that. And she got some great tricks. Yeah,
Maybe I should
So-
put that in my book.
You should.
yeah.
Right, well, will we move on to Alex Gogarty reading Maude Apatow's story next?
Excited.
Maude Apatow's story
Yes,
next.
because I have so much more questions, but I do feel that they wrap into Maude's story, which I love that they kind of synchronized in their own way.
I was a really weird kid. I knew it. Everyone else knew it. And the worst part was, everyone else knew that I knew it. I could tell the adults around me felt bad for me. So one of the ways they tried to make me feel better about myself was by saying that I was an old soul. That was encouraging. Now it all started to make sense. I wasn't a loser with no friends. I was an old soul. Ahead of my time. I fit in better with adults than my peers because I was worldly. I was smarter. Even though I was 8, I seemed like someone who had life experience and gained wisdom from it. I was special. The kids from school wouldn't get it. They wouldn't get me. But I desperately wanted them to. So I made it my mission to change everything about myself. All I had to do was act normal. But in all my attempts to not be weird, I made things so much worse. When I was 10, I joined a theatre troupe. We were doing Hairspray, and I was cast as Tracy Turnblad's mother, Edna. If you've seen the movie, it's the part played by John Travolta. And if you're an old soul like me, Harvey Firestein. After 2 weeks of rage at this casting choice, I decided to embrace it. I took the show very, very seriously, convincing myself that I was the only person in the group who had any respect for the show or theatre as a whole. If I was serious enough, I thought people would be afraid to make fun of me. They would be intimidated by my commitment. This did not work. I became weirder. Then I tried to go to camp, because everyone loves camp. Not me. I tried to ranch camp, because someone I thought was cool loved horses. So I spent the week wearing cowboy boots, mucking stalls, and learning how to throw a lasso. At the end of the week, the camp put on a rodeo to show our parents the skills we had learned over the course of the week. I knew at that point that I had bad aim and zero connection to horses, but I still wanted to leave my mark. I thought I had a chance by being a part of the rodeo's finale, the sheep riding competition. I put my life on the line, riding a sheep backwards and blindfolded for extra points, while Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train blasted. I didn't even place in the top 3. It was devastating. A couple of years later, I tried again and thought it best to return to the theatre. Theatre camp. It made perfect sense. Until about 2 weeks in, when I learned about the polar plunge. Every year, the camp did something called the polar plunge, where the campers jump into the freezing lake at 6 a.m. Exhilarating. Though nothing on earth sounded worse to me, I had too much pride to be the only one in my cabin who didn't go. So I went, and actually did have a great time. But a couple hours later, I started to notice little red bumps all over my arms. Throughout the day, the bumps grew and spread. I had landed myself in the infirmary with swimmer's itch, a parasite found in duck poop. Because I was last in line to shower after the plunge, the parasite-infected shit water dried on my skin and created itchy boils all over my entire body. Not only did I feel weird on the inside, now people could not hide their disgust at the sight of me. I couldn't blame them, but it did not help my confidence. At 13, I was afraid to dance and grind at bar mitzvahs because I thought people would...
I'm sorry. Is that what happens?
Is
at
that
bar
a thing
mitzvah?
at a bar mitzvah?
It sounds like an oxymoron.
That was the big thing, grinding.
Grinding at the bar mitzvahs.
Oh, we
fucking love that.
grinded. I was like, what?
I think everyone would be afraid.
Bumping and
Um,
grinding.
I know, I tough one not to.
At 13, I was afraid to dance and grind at bar mitzvahs because I thought people would think I was creepy or had bad rhythm. So I sat in the corner and read the Huffington Post on my phone, so it looked like I was doing something important. If I'd understood what stocks were, I would have checked them. Either way, nobody cared, but I still wanted them to. At 16, I had my first kiss. I had stalled until I got my braces off because I had heard horror stories of people's braced teeth getting stuck together, mouth to mouth. My nightmare. After I got my braces off, I was faced with a new problem. For some reason, one of my canine teeth never grew in, so I was given a retainer with a fake tooth on it, also known as a flipper. It wasn't noticeable from the outside, but it was to me, and probably anyone who was poking around in there. It all came to a head when the boy I liked came over to my house to study, and I spent 2 hours avoiding his gaze, because I knew if we made eye contact, he would lean in, and then possibly slip his tongue into my mouth and feel my flipper. I ended up leaving the room probably upwards of 7 times to do various important tasks, printing things that didn't need to be printed, you get it. We did end up kissing, sans tongue, thank God, but our relationship was short-lived. Partly because I don't know if I ever let him kiss me again, and also because he told me he had a bong he named Aphrodite, and I got the ick. I would have to find someone else. Still searching for belonging, I returned, once again, to the theatre. I thought I was a hit in the theatre department, but looking back, it turns out I'd also burned a lot of bridges. This may have been due to my propensity for going method for the role. When I was 8, in preparation for my Gold Rush Day performance, I ripped out a non-loose baby tooth with a pair of rusty pliers in an attempt to look more like an 1840s gold miner. Perhaps, later in life, that's why my tooth never grew in. Anyway, I didn't receive the positive reaction and praise I was looking for, but God, it was good theatre. And I knew that. So when later, during our senior year production of Cabaret, I told my scene partner to actually hit me in the face. He told our teacher he didn't feel comfortable hitting me for real, but the real slap would lead to a better performance. It was obvious. That did not change his mind. I had to change tactics. So, I didn't say he was an unprofessional pussy, but I did imply it. It worked. He hit me with so much force, so much rage behind it, it must have been building for years. The sting from his slap brought tears to my eyes, just like I'd hoped. This time people did care, but not for the right reasons. They were very concerned. I still think it was one of the best performances that auditorium has ever seen. But among my misguided attempts at normalcy, the worst of them all was my decision to join a sorority in college. I thought being part of a very serious, structured, activities-based organisation would be something I'd enjoy. None of my previous life experiences were apparently taken into consideration. Either way, I was excited to have a fresh start in college. I can reinvent myself as a social team player and was not weird. Lucky for me, most of the activities were drinking-based. I could get so drunk that I could get out of my head. Not only out of my head, but I could forget that I had a body in the first place. It was awesome. One night, I was studying with some of my sorority sisters, sober of course. One of them said, "Maude, you're so fun." When you're drunk. I took that as my cue to never hang out with them sober again. My sophomore year, my roommate in the sorority house had her boyfriend come back and sleep over in our room. All it took was that one time to know that I needed to go. I didn't want to confront her or make her feel bad, so I thought it would make more sense for me to move out without telling anyone. When people asked where I was, I told them I had a sleep-talking problem and needed to live alone. Yet again, I was being totally normal and totally cool. In case whoever is reading this does not do the delivery justice, I was being so fucking weird again. And because I moved out of the house, I missed a lot of the bonding time with my sisters and the boys in the fraternities. One of the traditions was to wake up the frat boys on football game day. We would all run over to the frat house and jump on their beds, pour alcohol in their mouths and play music. But because I moved out and never really hung out with anyone, I never bonded properly with the boys in the frat. So when I was assigned the room of boys I needed to wake up, they were complete strangers. I stood watching all the other girls jumping on the boys' beds, laughing, screaming, having the time of their lives. And then I approached my poor target. I had never been so scared, but I couldn't give anyone any reason to think less of me. So I stormed over to him and then immediately lost my nerve. I delicately poured the most gentle stream of vodka over the face of the boy, whose name I still do not know. He opened his eyes, looking up at me, exhausted, while I was mid-pour, wondering who the fuck I was. That moment, where we locked eyes and I realised he knew how fucking weird I was, it haunts me to this day. That was a wake-up call. I was miserable. I was pretending to be happy, but I would cry every day while I walked to class. Sometimes it was so cold, my tears would freeze on my face. I tried to turn things around, because maybe it wasn't too late. So I made an effort to be an active member of my sorority. When it was time to rush the new girls, every girl I talked to did not join. Was it something I said? Who cares about the girls? It was the boys I needed to impress. So I started dating a frat brother. If you can believe it, he ended up dumping me. It started me in a downward spiral where I got pink eye, fell down the stairs, and vomited up my favourite snack, frozen taquitos, in public. I dropped out of school. Rock bottom. But you know what they say to weird kids and drug addicts? The only place to go from a rock bottom is up. When I thought things couldn't get any worse, things actually started to turn around for me. I auditioned for a role in a movie where maybe people would take the craft as seriously as I had all throughout my life. And then this amazing thing happened. They did. I found a place where I was not feared. I was not laughed at. I was finally part of something. I found people that could appreciate my weirdness. So I started to appreciate my weirdness. Or at least I'm on my way. Because looking back, I think most of my bad life choices can all be traced back to the moment someone called me an old soul. Because I became consumed with the idea that I was different and that that was a bad thing. I was weird and I pretended to be someone I'm not. And I was bad at it in life and it didn't help. But now, being someone I'm not is literally my job. And I think I'm good at it. I guess all I'm saying is, if I could tell that little toothless 8-year-old Maude that 2 full-grown men from Dublin were fighting for my love on a podcast, she never would have believed it. Because she still thought she was too weird for anyone to ever care. And also, she wouldn't have known what a podcast is.
Yay!
Wow.
Thank you. Well done.
Very good.
How did that feel how did it feel listening to your story being told by, I guess, a stranger?
For all intents and purposes.
No, it was a great reading, but a painful listen.
I know what that's like.
We all do in this room. It's quite confronting hearing someone else read something so like exposing about yourself.
It's very vulnerable.
Right. That's what it's all about.
Especially
here.
someone else reading it.
I know, exactly.
Oof.
But what I think this story is great for, Maude, is, and outside of the cursing that is in this podcast, it's great for kids because I do feel like kids are generally given labels or categorized when they're young and they're told they're this or they're that. And then you kind of just go with that. Like I was like the weird one, the old soul, like, because I have a sister and we you know, that more automatically becomes that. So you're given roles and then you kind of grow up and you're like, is that who I am? But like you've been trying to be that person for years. So I think like it's great that you acknowledge that and that eventually sort of found like that you love your weirdness. Right?
And that place
I just made that up for this story.
Yeah.
Right, you're still struggling. Still in pain. Still in pain.
But you also acknowledge that you're still on a journey towards accepting that too, and also you've discovered a space where that is appreciated. But even if it's externally appreciated, it takes a bit of time for it to be internally appreciated by social osmosis. You know, I think we're all navigating that. Like I will say, with the hand on my heart, that all 4 of us definitely are a bit weird. Well, sorry, I'm speaking for myself here.
Back
But
to the weirdest, actually.
I used to wear.
Thank you.
I used to try and fit in as well, but I also kind of saw myself as being way ahead of the curve because I had like 4 older siblings, and you know, I'd listen to indie music that my siblings would recommend to me, and I used to go to, like, we were raised in a Catholic household, and I used to go to mass to church every Sunday wearing a green Converse shoe and a blue Converse shoe because I thought it looked really fucking cool. And then in first year university, I had harem pants which my friend had bought in India, and I used to get the train into Trinity, and once I got in within the 4 walls of Trinity College, I'd change out of my regular pants and I'd wear my harem pants around university, like thinking that was a cool fashion statement. It was just so fucking attention seeking and pick me and weird. Hindsight, but once again I thought I was being cool, so I saw myself in a lot of that story. A lot, actually, frightening amount.
Yeah, but that's, I think everyone is weird, and especially when you're a kid. And that's the thing, it's so relatable. Even if you are like a bit of a weirder kid, or even what one might say a bit more of a normal child, you still in your head think you're so weird. You always, I think, and that even happens to this day. But I think, as we were saying earlier, now I get older, you look back and it's like you're actually kind of proud of being a weird kid. And like those kind of idiosyncrasies are a positive thing. So no, it was such a good story, so funny, and great message.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also the thing where you think you're not cool, but then Alex's whole story was about how cool he thought you actually were. It's like really funny about like perceptions on stuff.
And then conversely, you listen to my voice note and you're like, that guy's so weird, and then you meet me, you're like, wait, he's actually so cool. Like, yeah,
Exactly.
it's just like perception. It's just like such a weird thing.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. But do you not find it's like really funny as an adult that like being cool is going against the grain, but as a kid being cool is actually just like being the most basic, general, like fit in, like being popular in essence is being the most generically liked, like mass person.
Yeah.
So like it's funny how that shifts.
Do you think it's different now? Since like TikTok is obviously like promoting all this individuality and like kids are constantly trying to stand out, like Gen Zs are a lot more out there, or is that just a real boomer statement to make?
I would think that that's helpful to see as a kid, just that what other kids are up to and thinking about, and like also very toxic. But like if I had seen that as a kid, I'd probably felt more seen.
Yeah, I think so too.
I used to find it so confusing what was cool in school because all the rules were conflicting. I remember once I was sitting beside my friend when we were like 13, and he's telling me about this movie he watched the night before, and it was something with Christian Bale. I can't remember. It was like random sci-fi. And he's like, "Yeah, it was so good, man." I was like, "That sounds class." And I went home and I found it online. I watched it, and the next day I was like, first thing in the morning, I was like, "Oh my god, I watched that film. You told me." He's like, "You actually watched that? You watched the thing that I told you to do? That's so embarrassing." I was like, I was like, "How do you win? How do you win?"
Yeah, that is bad.
You can't win. Sorry,
But now we're all so happy.
Yeah, we're smiling.
Yeah.
Non-stop. Me and Bex are really curious about the slap scene in your story. We loved it, but we also love to know more about it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of my part in Euphoria is based on what I was like in school in the theater department,
I was wondering.
which was a complete
way.
nightmare. I think like I always channeled all of my like anxiety and stress about whatever was happening in my life into making theater and making it the best version, or whatever version I thought was the best version, and was like a tyrant. And I feel so bad about it now, but that is the Lexi play sequence.
Episode.
That's because I told Sam Levinson that was true. And this is what I was like in high school, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we got to put that in there."
Yeah.
That's so cool. So was that character development inspired by your own life?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that
That
part
that
was
specific part,
a
yeah.
couple parts. Yeah. But I know he's very like collaborative that way.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it makes sense that she would be a theater kid or be really shy in life, and then it all comes out.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's the case for a lot of theatre kids, right?
Oh
I
yeah.
think, well, the theatre thing, like, it's kind of what you write, which I thought was interesting too, of saying you're so uncomfortable in being yourself in so many parts of your life, but actually the thing that you're best at is playing a role of someone else.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, I mean, obviously you're an actress, so what is that like? Like, more...
I know. I realized that as I was writing it. I was like, how funny that that's what I do now. But back to the cabaret thing. I mean, then I did cabaret on the West End last summer, which, full circle, my dream. But yeah, there's this kid, Jake, and he was my scene partner, and we did a performance, and he did like this fake slap, a really dramatic one, and it was so obviously fake. And I was like, that is so disrespectful that you would do that to me and distract from the scene with your fake ass slap. I was like, look me in the eyes and fucking slap me. Like I really like came for him, and then he did.
Oh
but
my God,
yeah,
you did it.
But I like I said, I think it was a great performance.
I was
And then in the West End version, they don't even do the slap.
Yeah, I was
It's like an almost slap, and then he feels guilty before.
I was gutted. I actually just missed you in the West End. I went to see that production in maybe November this year.
Oh, I just left. I left end of September.
Yeah, we saw the Self-Esteem version instead. But what was really funny is I'm a theatre noob. And I'm ashamed to say it. I think I've only been to 4 theatre productions in my entire life. Even though I actually also was a Lexi in school. I directed and wrote my own school play, which definitely will not speak about on this podcast. But my friend Dawn is obsessed with theatre. She loves live productions, and I bought her tickets to this cabaret show in London for her birthday. And I was like, it's quite expensive for a cabaret show, but fuck it, it's London. Didn't realise it was a theatre production. I didn't realise it was a cabaret. I thought we were just going to a cabaret club. Dawn like lost
the ultimate cabaret.
It was the most amazing experience of my entire life. Like, I was sitting there, I just couldn't believe how immersive it was and how
Maud's gonna
amazing.
slap you.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it slapped me.
No, it's so funny. We had like a lot of people would come to the show. Like, I mean, what do you say? Hindus?
Yeah.
Would come and they'd be really drunk and like kind of think they were walking into something really fun and exciting, and
Which it
then it really takes the turn.
Yeah.
No one would see it coming,
Yeah.
and I always felt bad for them. I could see them in the front, like, oh fuck, what are we doing here?
Strapped in. That must have been a pinch me moment, right?
It was, I mean, London's like my favorite city too, and so coming here to do that, that was the best experience of my life for sure. I honestly could not believe it, but I was also so exhausted, and like my body was broken, so I feel like I blacked out. But now in hindsight, I'm like, that was so like the most fulfilling thing I've ever done.
So you've came back to pain again. You keep doing this with your passion. You like a tooth pull. You pulled your literal tooth out.
That's the weirdest thing I've ever done. I don't know what that was about. It was so violent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you obviously.
I did it for the craft.
You did.
It's-
You did.
was
You're a
method.
tortured artist.
It's
It
very...
really just at the end of the day, all in good fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
The other part of your story, which I thought was very honest, was about the drinking as a way to cope.
Yeah.
I think we all do it at uni, right? Like there's a lot of drink culture. But why did you want to include that? Was that just because you say about like it allowing you to like leave your body in a way and like leave your mind? Is that like part of getting rid of anxiety or pressure in a way? Like, do you think that's why a lot of people do it at that age?
I would assume so. I mean, I went to the same school my whole life, like kindergarten through 12th grade. And like my 4 best friends are my best friends now. And so when I went to college, a lot of people coming into college were like, oh, we never really found our people or our place, and like really wanted to explore. And so I felt like I didn't find my place, but I knew who my people were. Like I had my friends from home. And so I came into it and didn't. Yeah, maybe I just didn't put myself out there because I was too nervous to. I'd never had to like make that big of a transition before. I never moved schools, and I never made a new group of friends. And so that was really stressful for me. And so, yeah, I guess drinking made it a little easier, which is kind of sad. But that I think a lot of people,
100%.
that's why they're binge drinking in college, because it's so intense. It's a huge shift.
Yeah, it is. Even if you find your people in college. Like, it was definitely the case for me that when I moved to Dublin for university, I really felt like I'd landed into a group of people. But I was an absolute delinquent for my first couple of years, partying loads, reveling loads, and lost myself in it for sure. So I don't think even if you found your people, you still just have this sense of identity crisis that drink very much masks. And luckily I've been able to come out of it. I think we all have, and I have a healthy relationship with alcohol now, but there is a moment for sure in college where you do just lose yourself in it because it's like the accepted thing to do, I guess.
Well, it's so normalized. Like
So
when we
normalized.
do these game days, we wake up at 4:30, get fully ready, and then be blackout drunk by 9 a.m.
Crazy.
And so now I'm like, what was I doing? But that was what everyone else was doing. So I was like, all right.
Those people who are pouring vodka down the throats of, were they playing the games?
No.
Okay, I was like, that's clearly not healthy.
I know. I didn't know how much detail to go into about
no,
the
that's
actual
fine.
like logistics of the sorority, but yeah, we just had like a frat that we're like, I mean, that we'd always hang out with, our like partner in the Greek life.
The contemporaries or whatever. Yeah.
My best friend from college, Sydney, we came to the realization about the old soul thing together. We were having a conversation, and like we were like, was that just because we like lacked like a youthful spirit? Like what was it? Were we dead inside? Like we always talk about how like when we were younger, like I feel everyone's like, oh, when you grow up you feel so much like more responsibility, and I was like, as a child I had like the weight of my the weight of the world on my shoulders for no reason other than like I just thought that I should, and I took on like responsibility. I mean, I don't know what for, but I felt like, God, I was so like tortured myself for no reason, and now I feel so much better. But it's such a weird thing as a kid. I think some kids are just.
But you find that, because I'm the same, where I'm the eldest as well. I don't know like if that like feeds into it, but I was like this little like old woman child in so many ways, and then like so then I always thought, oh, I'll get married and like settle down by like the ripe age of 16 or something. Like, I mean, that's an Irish thing too. But I always had this like idea, and I'll have like loads of kids, and I'll be like that role. And then the more time went on, I was like, oh, I'll give it a bit longer. And then like I've become more childish and irresponsible now, which I'm terrified of how that's going to go in the next 5 years. But you know what I mean? Like I've almost gone not the complete opposite way, but like compared to what I was as this like little child.
Yeah. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I like left college and then I had my fun, and I was like, oh God, everyone else is like over this. And now I'm like, because I left college 2 years in, and the reason I left was because I got a job, which is not what I said in the story, but that is why I left. Yeah. And so I just started working right away. And then when I finished work, everyone graduated, and I was just like, post-COVID, like, oh shit, I never had my like college moment really. I just, so then, had a weird couple years, but we're back.
Sure, Alex is just now becoming
stand-up comedian.
This is it, yeah. That only started 6 months ago. So, but it is funny. I think about like the weirdness thing that we were talking about of like when you're in college or when you're in school, you don't want to be weird. And now it's like my favorite thing to do, and especially even Gaffney and I's friendship. So our friendships is about just being weird.
We're
and like
so
it's
weird.
But I've never been more comfortable in my own skin and being like kind of like in no way get embarrassed and just having such strange. But I was gonna ask more because you mentioned your four best friends when you're like super young, you're still really good friends. Now that you're established as an actor, can you still like meet up to 5 of you and just go out and be weird, have weird fun, or is it, do you have to kind of be like, I have to be a bit more mature now because there might be
do you have to behave?
4 cameras around.
Oh, like in public?
Yeah.
Oh no one cares. Yeah, I don't.
Still be weird.
Maybe I should, but
No.
We should be weirder.
No. Yeah.
I fly under the radar. I'm like that level of fame that you want.
It's the dream. Yeah. No, I think you're a little bit
You're like,
higher.
oh, okay. I don't really care, but and then you keep moving on.
That's the dream.
My last point here I have is on delusion, which I feel like you have in the backward sense of like you actually you play yourself down. Whereas like a lot of us would do that too, but we should like play ourselves up a bit more. And I don't know if anyone knows of Marissa Peer. She's fucking incredible. She's like this. She's come up with this whole like hypnosis sort of like psychological practice thing that she has. But it really, I was listening to her and it really hit me because I just thought it was really interesting. She basically says that because we all like make stories up in our head about like how people see us or like situations and different things, that we're literally living in a delusion because the stories that we tell ourselves are actually just not true. So she was like, why don't you just tell yourself a story that's like a positive delusion rather than a negative delusion and like see how that one plays out? And I was like, so like for a week I really went all in on that. And it was really good.
What was your positive delusion?
Oh, just that, I'm the best thing. Like, people send me voice notes saying they're like 100% in love with me. So, yeah.
It is interesting. I had a hypnotist actually tell me a similar thing. Like, or when you watch a scary movie, it's a movie, but you still like react physically as if you're being attacked or something's jumping at you. And so like if you are the type of person to imagine negative things or scary things all the time on a loop, you're physically reacting to those thoughts like a movie. And so I was like, oh, that's why I'm always on edge, because in my head I'm like, what if I fell down the stairs, or what if I like pushed someone into the street, or like and so it's a tricky, strange thing, like, and you can change that, but it does take a lot of work.
It's like intrusive thoughts, right?
Oh yeah. And I think that's part of the reason I was so like, if I'm a child, I don't understand what's happening, I've just convinced myself that I'm like a weird person and a freak, then everything just confirms that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Can I say the best line in your story for me specifically was riding a sheep backwards blindfolded to Ozzy Osbourne?
Yeah. That happened. I did happen. I do have video of that. Maybe I'll share it with you.
Please do.
I would
to promote the podcast.
Yes,
of
please
course.
do. We will.
I mean, like, you haven't done enough. That would be great.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah. Maude Apatow and Alex Gogarty, thank you so much for coming on the
you
podcast
guys.
of Dreams.
That was so fun.
It was so nice to have you on, and we're looking forward to seeing where both of your careers go in the future.
I think one big thanks to shout out to Maude, because as embarrassing as for me to come on a podcast to tell that story, also very brave to come on a podcast with this guy, send you a random message on Instagram. So huge shout out to Paddy, who I also do actually like very much.
Massive shout out to Maddie.
And huge thanks to you guys. It's such a good podcast. The first couple episodes released, it's been so good. And Seanchoíche, as you know, Gaff, I absolutely love. It's an amazing initiative. So amazing to see it doing so well.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for having me.
Join us next time to walk in more people's shoes, hear stories around different themes, and have more great discussions. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and we look forward to you joining us next time to connect through the power of shared storytelling.